Welcome to Heath Properties. Heath Properties instills great importance in the lease signing process. Leasees and their guarantors are responsible for reading their lease in its entirety. If you have questions, please contact Heath Properties or an advisor. Lesser is the name, address, and telephone number for your landlord. Leasee includes you and your roommates. All leases are signed jointly and severally, which means you are each individually liable for all financial and lease obligations outlined herein. Please be sure the apartment you're leasing is clearly outlined. The term of your lease is the number of months between the start and end date. The term rent is the monthly rent times the number of months you are leasing the premises. The remainder of the section is a tax clause, which is not typically used. An NA is located in each of the blanks, which means not applicable. Each leasee is required to initial where indicated, affirming their agreement with lease amounts and terms. During the course of the lease, you need to contact maintenance at Heath Properties if maintenance is needed. The additional provisions section makes reference to 1. The fact that all rent payments are collected by automatic withdrawal from one account designated by you, and 2. That there's a list of provisions outlined on the 6th page of this lease. The body of the lease, which are pages 2, 3, 4, and 5, outline the legal parameters of our agreement. The section is similar to the lease provided by the Greater Boston Real Estate Board and should be reviewed carefully and signed on page 5. The additional provision page outlines the rules and regulations that are specific to the properties managed by Heath Properties. This lease commences at 1 p.m. and terminates at 5 p.m. on the termination date of your lease. Leases that commence on September 1st will terminate at 5 p.m. on August 30th. Rental payments are automatically debited from the account you designate on the first business day of the month. Late fees are assessed for rent, which is 30 days past due. Any money received is applied to past balances first and then to current monthly rent. Under no circumstances are pets or water beds allowed on the premises. Tenants and their guests are not permitted to place trash in any common areas of the property, including sidewalks and yards. Failure to abide by this will result in a $100 fine in addition to any fines issued by the City of Boston. Tenants are responsible for abiding by all condominium rules and regulations. Failure to do so will likely result in fees or fines. Tenants are responsible for unclogging their toilets and changing their light bulbs during the course of their lease. The landlord does not remove snow from driveways or parking areas unless specifically consented to in the lease. Tenants are responsible for ensuring funds are in their account to be debited on the first business day of each month. Tenants are responsible for all costs associated with the enforcement of timely rental payments. The security deposit is applied to damages after the termination of the lease and cannot be used as rent or applied to damages during the lease. Leasees cannot install or add locks on unit or bedroom doors. Tenants will be held responsible for the cost to remove or replace them. All utilities are tenants' responsibility unless otherwise outlined on the lease. Parties are not permitted at any time. A party is defined as one or more people disturbing the quiet enjoyment of others. Failure to abide by this regulation will result in a fine per disturbance and notification to all guarantors and governing entities, including universities. The apartment must be professionally cleaned at the leasee's expense prior to lease expiration. All carpets must be professionally cleaned at the leasee's expense prior to their departure. Receipt for both services must be forwarded to Heath Properties within 10 days of move-out. In the case of a lockout, a $100 fee is to be paid by the leasee to the individual responding. If tenants have not prepared for extermination, they will be responsible for the cost of extermination. Tenants cannot tamper with life safety devices, including smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. It is the tenant's responsibility to replace batteries as needed. Tenants are responsible for any and all repairs caused by the mistreatment of the premises. This includes garbage disposals and appliances. A tenant code of conduct is attached and should be reviewed carefully. Floor protectors must be affixed to all furnishings that are placed on wood flooring. Damages resulting from negligence are borne solely by the leasees or their guarantor. Heath Properties reports delinquencies to the credit reporting agencies. Tenants are held responsible for all costs associated with collecting and reporting their past due balances. Properties will be listed for rent on January 1st if tenants have not renewed their lease in writing. Units are shown immediately upon notice of non-renewal. Maintenance items are addressed after move-in and cannot be completed on the first days of occupancy. Tenants must have all their personal belongings and rubbish removed from the premises no later than 5 p.m. on the termination date of this lease. The landlord does not provide rubbish removal and recommends tenants pay close attention to city sanitation schedules prior to move-out. Anyone in a student status must have a financially qualified guarantor unless otherwise instructed. Office correspondences and security deposit refunds are mailed to the first name listed on this lease. A forwarding address must be provided in writing in advance of the termination of this lease. Leasees will be responsible for reimbursing the lessor for payment of any and all broker's commissions if the leasee moves out prior to the termination date of this lease or is evicted. This includes both commissions paid by the landlord relating to your occupancy, as well as commissions paid by the landlord to re-rent your apartment. The deposit receipt form is used to outline what money the landlord is requiring and where it will be held. Most units require the first month's rent, last month's rent, security deposit, and key installation charge. The security deposit, less any damages, is refunded to the person who is named first on the lease approximately 30 days after the lease termination. The apartment condition statement outlines the condition of the apartment at the commencement of the lease and must be executed at lease signing. The form is not meant to be a maintenance request list. It is merely used to summarize permanent defects that exist in the apartment, such as a dent in the refrigerator door or a knife mark on the kitchen counter. Signing the document does not waive your right to alter the document, providing it is completed and returned within 15 days of your lease commencement. Your landlord requires that you have renter's insurance to protect your personal belongings and liability during your lease term and any extension. The tenant certification page is a summary of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts tenant-led law notification and discloses all knowledge pertaining to lead paint in the premises, as well as landlord and tenant obligations. The Heath Properties Tenant Code of Conduct was developed in conjunction with the City of Boston and Neighborhood Services to ensure students clearly understand their role and responsibility living in a residential community in Boston. We require our tenants to behave in an orderly and respectful manner at all times. Your neighbors have an absolute right to enjoy their home and neighborhood without interference. Please read the Code of Conduct carefully and be mindful that consequences for violating this section are severe and have resulted in expulsion, loss of scholarships, and financial aid. Your apartment is professionally managed by Heath Properties. A fee schedule and description is outlined. Please note that not all costs and descriptions apply to every lease. The pre-lease document describes the entire agreement between the renter and the management company prior to the lease commencement. All referenced stipulations must be met on or before the agreed-upon deadlines. Please note that tenants forfeit their right to lease the apartment along with all funds if the schedule is not met. Keys are not distributed until all payments, broker fees, and original paperwork, including guarantor forms, have been provided to Heath Properties. Smoking of all substances is strictly prohibited in or near any properties managed by Heath Properties. Attached, please find our mold addendum. All occupants must provide their contact information even if it may already have been provided on the rental application. As previously discussed, Heath Properties requires rental payments by electronic fund transfer. It is suggested that a joint bank account is opened if there are multiple occupants. You are required to provide a U.S. checking or savings account number and a void check to facilitate the payment process. Most occupants are required to provide an original notarized guarantee of lease form. This form is a legal document and must be completed and signed by a financially qualified individual in front of a notary public. It cannot be filled out by leasees. Information contained herein is protected in accordance with the consumer privacy laws and is destroyed after lease termination. The guarantee of lease is due on or before the date outlined on the pre-lease agreement. No occupant is allowed access to an apartment unless all co-occupants have completed and returned original forms in their entirety. If you have any additional questions, please do not hesitate to contact Heath Properties at 617-266-1168 or office@heathproperties.com. Thank you and enjoy your day.